redemption. That is the word for our experience in Cambodia. Our team had the chance to teach at 4 different locations. 3 schools, 1 church, all under the leadership and direction of our global worker partner, Darth Lee. On the first day, we went to 2 locations, both of which were former killing field graveyards, where countless individuals were murdered by the Khmer Rouge under Pol Pot in the 1970s. During the construction of the Dream Center School, they found the victims of this evil regime under the dirt as they excavated and laid the foundation for the building. The second location was a larger plot of land and a known location of genocide at the hands of the Khmer Rouge. These locations were considered cursed by the locals because Cambodia is 97% Buddhist, and these locations were thought to be haunted by the souls of those who were killed and buried there. These plots of land that were once cursed by the blood of genocide and left to rot are now the locations of 2 schools and a church. Only Jesus can bring back to life things that have died. Only he can provide hope to a land where there was only despair. Later in the week, we visited a church that was newly constructed by hand by the local pastor himself. And in Cambodia, there is a culture of visiting the local Buddhist temple to worship. It's seen as the epicenter of culture, of worship, and community within each neighborhood. So the construction of a church is a really big deal there. Darth shared a story of a young boy in the neighborhood of this church that would listen to the Christians worship from a distance. When his parents found out, they beat him and forbade him from going again. And continually, the boy would sneak out to go hear the Christians worship, and he would get closer and closer and closer each time he would go. So after many beatings and attempts to forcefully keep him in the home, the family finally came to know the Lord, just like this little boy. And the pastor of this church is now planting and leading multiple churches and Bible studies and is showing no signs of slowing down anytime soon. And finally, our team visited a village that floats entirely on a lake called Tonle Sap. The only way to reach the village is by driving on the dry riverbed until you are forced to take a boat the rest of the way. And during the wet season, this lake is nearly 40 feet higher than it was when we visited. This village relies on what they can get from the water. Their food source, their water source, their bathrooms and plumbing all come from the same place. And it's hard to even comprehend a life spent entirely in a home that floats on barrel drums or nets full of plastic bottles. And you might anticipate the sorrow that comes with having nothing, but you would be wrong. These children have everything they need for joy and hope, because situated on a floating barge at the entrance of the village is a beacon of hope. They may not have any of the conveniences we have taken for granted every day, but the joy in their heart would give us a run for our money. In one of the least likely places in the world, there's a church. On the middle of a lake, floating on a barge, in a country whose population is less than 2% Christian, you can find a community of disciples who place their faith and hope in Jesus Christ. The members of our team all felt like God had called them to be on this trip. The only problem is that more than half of our team had very little confidence in their ability to minister to children. In America and places around the world, there is a culture of church. There's a culture of ministering to children. And it can be easy to maybe set aside kids' ministry as just a supplemental part of church that someone else will take care of. But what about a country with no established church? What about a country where the children are seen as inconveniences and pushed to the side? What about a country where the love of God would be seen as a weakness because Buddhism teaches you to discard all attachments or desires in your life? How do you make disciples in a country like that? Well, Darth explained that ministering to the next generation is their primary strategy to reach and redeem the entire country of Cambodia for the gospel. Parents don't really care if their children learn about Jesus and go to a Christian school, as long as they're being educated and fed and becoming more obedient at home. And so our partnership with Darth, his wife Tita, and the dozens of teachers they lead is impacting thousands of children who would otherwise have nearly zero access to the gospel. This is how God redeems a generation. This is how God redeems something as evil as genocide. This is how God redeems the country and people of Cambodia. It is through the faithful work of those who have boots on the ground. It's through the faithful generosity of the church to send them there. It is through the prayer of God's people to see breakthrough happen. And sometimes it's through the goofy skit, the actions to a children's song, the experiment that demonstrates faith, the attempts at jumping rope, or the sucker in a simple hug. All I can say is that I am proud of our team, and I am proud to be partnered with the men and women and children who are shaping a generation. As for the rest of the trip, it really can't be put into words. You will just have to join us next time.